This is Critical Commentary with Maurice Williams. Today we're going to discuss the Big Beautiful Bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, because those are 2 points of contention in the current government shutdown. Blacks, Hispanics, and whites can't read. Why you think I started a podcast? It's a fucking racist thing with you niggas, and that's why I'm coming at you niggas next. They love to talk about black violence. Have you heard of white violence? White people commit violent crime at 3 times the rate of Asians. When is Nick Fuentes gonna talk about white violence? Everybody's arguing about there are 2 genders. I sat next to her hermaphrodite in math class. Am I allowed to talk about the Jews? If she wanted, we could do it in the morning. Yawning, letting my eyes stretch, baby, I ain't a novice. I've been a dog, she FaceTime, but I never call. The government is closed. So we reached day 7 or 8 in the government shutdown. And I wanted to speak about the Big Beautiful Bill, which was passed in 2025, and the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed in 2022, because what happened in both of those bills is what the Republicans and Democrats are currently fighting over. The Big Beautiful Bill was passed in 2025 because the Republicans now have control of the 3 branches of government: the executive branch with the president, and then also Congress with the Senate and the House. So the Republicans passed a bill called the Big Beautiful Bill, which the Congressional Budget Office says they expect will cost the American people about $3.5 trillion in debt over the course of 10 years. The Congressional Budget Office is a bipartisan group that looks at the economic effects they anticipate happening based upon various bills. So typically, Republicans have a conservative mindset when it comes to politics, so they would want to lower the deficit. But the Republicans were trying to extend the tax benefits that they extended in 2017 in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which extended cuts for people who own businesses and who are wealthy. So not small businesses. Well, they had benefits for small businesses, but the big tax breaks were for the larger corporations and wealthy business owners. So these tax cuts that they gave to the wealthy was because Republicans are following a logic that Ronald Reagan introduced, and the term was coined trickle-down economics. So the belief is that if wealthy people have more cash on hand that they're not paying in taxes, they will be able to continue to innovate and create more jobs. So if they're able to innovate and create more jobs, it's expected and anticipated that that will help the U.S. economy and help the workforce. Specifically with regards to what's going on now, in that bill that was passed in 2025, Republicans made some changes to Medicaid, Medicare, and the Affordable Health Care Act. So they are not asking, but the new law will state that there's a work requirement for able-bodied men, which they are saying by doing so, it'll cause those men to work so they'll have income, so the government won't have to subsidize those men. So that should help with the economy. Also, they're changing who's eligible for Medicare, and they're limiting the use of hospitals by immigrants. So these various particulars the Republicans are saying will help the economy over time. So the Democrats, on the other hand, are saying that because the Inflation Reduction Act passed in 2022, that they believe that Congress, the president signed it and Congress voted on it. And based upon law and tradition, once something has been passed by both the executive branch and the legislative branch, it holds true. So the Democrats are saying that the subsidies that they're trying to get extended for Affordable Health Care Act were already approved. So they believe that the Republicans and the president don't have the right to prevent the extensions from continuing forth. So it's currently 2005 and the extensions weren't supposed to end until 2026. The reason that the Democrats are doing this now is because they kind of have some leverage in terms of stopping a 60-40 vote. So they don't want to wait until they potentially don't have the power to stop the bill. As I stated earlier, this is somewhat different from the normal course of normal policy between the two parties, because typically speaking, you would have Republicans trying to be conservative, lowering the debt, because in the Republicans' mindset is that they don't want Americans to owe money to anybody. So when the debt raises, that means we owe. Typically, it's been China in recent history, but we owe whoever is producing the products who we're receiving products from money. So Republicans don't want our generation to owe people more money as we get older. So typically they don't want us having a high debt. So they would be trying to cut it. Also, the Republicans look at social programs as a situation where the lower class is benefiting from the work and income of the middle class and the upper class. So social programs like welfare, Medicaid, housing vouchers, these things, we pay our taxes into the government, and then the government allocates the funds where they see fit. So what the Republicans will usually be trying to do is to cut taxes for everybody, including the middle class, the wealthy, those who are wealthy, but also the middle class, because their stance is the American people work for that money, and there's no reason. Not that there's no reason, but they would prefer that the Americans keep the money as opposed to our hard-earned money going to government programs that are subsidizing those who are less fortunate. The Democrats try to represent the working class. So their argument, or the counter argument, is that the people who are receiving these funds are working. They just are not in the system of capitalism producing as much income as those in the upper class. So the Democrats don't just represent what I'm calling the lower class, but they also call them the working class. So this would include people like bus drivers, nurses, school teachers, etc. Frontline workers, the essential workers that we still saw going to work during COVID who couldn't stay home. So what the Democrats are saying is that everybody, whether you're wealthy, whether you're middle class, or whether you're lower income or working class, we all are paying taxes. So since we're all putting money into this pot, we need to make sure that everybody's receiving benefits from it. The Democrats also believe that in the long term, by helping out members of the working class and lower class, they will be reducing crime and improving Americans' quality of life on the front end. So in my lifetime, I have seen recessions, but I have not seen a depression. But basically what was behind a lot of the programs we see now was there was a depression in the 1930s. So these social nets were set in place to prevent mass suicide, people starving on the streets, people couldn't afford their homes, they were struggling to get food. So now the Democrats and Republicans are both trying to look out for the middle class. The Democrats less so the upper class, the Republicans somewhat less so the lower class. But what the politicians are trying to figure out is what is the best way to move the country forward, spending the tax money that we are taxed, and potentially with the Republicans, they're trying to cut a lot of the taxes. Now, outside of just the economic aspect, because that's me breaking down who the parties are representing from an economic place. As many of you may already know, you have conservatives who are poor who vote Republican, and you have wealthy people who are Democrats. Well, wealthy people who are liberal who vote for Democrats. So the reason for this is that all of our politics isn't broken down economically. So when you start adding in things like some race or gender issues like abortion, and various other cultural topics like capitalism versus socialism and things of this nature, people tend to have a difference on how they want to vote, even though sometimes it may not be in their best individual interest. Because I know of many black people who are not on welfare, and many whites as well who are not on welfare, but they still vote for people to utilize those programs, and they do so because they believe that in the long run, there's more good than bad that comes from that decision. So this is just going through some of the particulars that I already stated about this is the House Committee on the Budget stating what would happen, what they expect to happen based on Big Beautiful Bill passing. So as you can see here, it says that they expect a $4 trillion rise in the debt. They said it's going to cut Medicaid potential, not just Medicaid, but Medicaid, Medicare, and Affordable Care Act by $1 trillion. So specifically, the government would be spending less money on healthcare. It's going to raise the debt. This says by $5 million, so I was a little bit off. And this is a statement from Trump speaking about the big beautiful bill, passing it into law. He also stated that it would he's saying save $1 trillion. It's cutting that money from the government spending on it. So in a way it is saving, and it would lead to an increase in the people uninsured, which I think is a problem because we already currently have not all, but many Americans insured. So I've seen things that said 4.2 million people might become uninsured. That's high. This is saying 10. So I think that those people becoming insured may cause a problem later on in terms of like emergency visits, and just, I would prefer not to see people die. So if we are paying taxes, which most people are, I'm of the belief that even if my taxes are slightly higher than they would be without this bill, I would prefer to pay the taxes because I would want to see Americans as a whole have a higher quality of life. And then this next article is just speaking to the Inflation Reduction Act, which passed when Biden was in office and the Democrats had the Senate and House. So it passed in 2022. It created investments in clean energy, which is like eco-friendly policies and eco-friendly business. And they're saying that it's going to, in the long run, have a positive effect on Americans. It also cut Big Pharma's profits. So there were a few good things in the Inflation Reduction Act by cutting Big Pharma, making prices lower, and then the clean energy provisions as well being a success. Overall, it's not adding to the deficit, the trillions of dollars that Trump is, well, not Trump, but the Republican bill is adding. But the reduction of $200 billion isn't really, it's not much considering the overall debt that America has right now. But at least it's not adding to the deficit, and also it would not be cutting, well, it would not potentially be cutting like nursing homes being cut or rural hospitals being cut, because those are things that may potentially happen in the current big beautiful bill. Also, another thing that the Democrats were able to get in the 2002 Inflation Reduction Act was with the taxes on the rich. This, so as I explained earlier, there's like a sliding scale. Currently, wealthy people aren't taxed for when they buy back stocks, so it increases their wealth, but they're untaxed on it. And the Democrats passed something that would allow for there to be some tax on when wealthy people buy back stocks. So as you can see, it's just more of the same of the Democrats at least setting up policies that would potentially cause the wealthier individuals to pay more. The lower class tends to say pay their fair share, but currently, in honesty, the wealthy people, they pay more in taxes, but that's because they have more money. So to say they don't pay their fair share currently is not true, other than the fact that there are loopholes. So business people are able to get around their personal income because what they can do is they can put a lot of what they do into their businesses. And not to go off on a tangent, but businesses don't make as much money as people think because they're like costs and just things that have to be paid for. So because of loopholes, it's not so much the laws on paper, but some of the loopholes do allow the wealthy to get away with not paying their fair share. So as everything is kind of nuanced and tricky. On paper, the wealthy people are paying their fair share because they're paying the most. Then next is the middle class, and the least is the lower class. But in actual practice, wealthy people aren't paying their fair share because there's so many loopholes, and they're able to give to private nonprofit organizations, etc. They're able to put their money in different things to where they don't necessarily put it into taxes, but they do put it back into the community. There is a clip of Nick Fuentes being interviewed by Candace Owens that I actually came across a while ago, but I just thought it would be nice to check it out and do a reaction to it. And I'm not sure where this is in the interview, but Candace Owens is a big conservative influencer, and so is Nick Fuentes. Currently, I think they're like in some kind of beef or some kind of like tension situation. But at this time, I think this interview actually caused that actually. But currently, they're kind of going at it. But at this time, since they were both conservatives and they both tend to have strong criticisms of African Americans, they sat down and did an interview together. So I'm about to play that clip for you guys right now.
So I'm trying to understand if you think that it's all black people are like this, or if your world is kind of colored.
I'm actually gonna rewind this, but like I say, they start off talking about black people. So the same old from them. But the larger interview may have more like I saw with PBD. So if you haven't checked out the Candace and Nick Fuentes interview, check it out and just see all what they talked about and not just this particular clip. So I'll play it again and I'll try not to rewind in the future.
So I'm trying to understand if you think that it's all black people are like this, or if your world is kind of colored by this is what's going on in America. This has failed for 1,000 reasons. Welfareism has definitely, black people in 1940s, stand up. My grandfather, I talk about that denigration and the corrosion of culture. Yeah. That's happening.
So this is a short clip, but I can already see it's a lot going on. So she brought up, she's asking Nick about black culture, and she's asking her, is black culture the way it is because of, I guess, genetics, but she brought up, is it policies? So we were just talking about welfare and how the government's policies affect the economy. They also can potentially affect the culture. So when she brings up welfare came about in the 1930s because of the Depression, as I stated earlier in the episode, but then there were some tweaks in the 60s. So at one point you had poor blacks and poor whites living in cities, and they were all in the Section 8 housing. But then under the Jim Crow, which actually I think might have been under the Democrats, the poor whites were allowed to move to the rural America, and they were allowed to keep the father in the home. So the father could move with the white family to rural America. However, it was different for the African Americans. For them to stay in the Section 8 housing, a man could not be in the house. So because of this, the two cultures have had somewhat different, the two cultures have somewhat been affected differently based upon policies that were set in place. But before I go off on a tangent, let's see what they're talking about, where they're going.
Whatever you want to name it, there is this intentional corrosion of culture. So do you think it's literally, well, this is just what a black person is when they come out? Or do you think that post welfare, LBJ, Great Society, this is what black Americans have become, and I have a right to respond to that and say that as a white man, I don't want to live there?
Well, I think it's more nature than people would like to believe. There's this classic tension of, is it nature, is it nurture, is it cultural, or is it intrinsic, is it racial? And I've always been on the latter side of this among conservatives. Conservatives like to say it's all culture.
We're agreeing so far. I think I stated a couple episodes ago that nature and nurture both affect people's behavior, people's intelligence, people's decisions. But I do believe that there's also a genetic component. So he's saying the genetic component is more than nurture. I would say that too. I do think that your genetics play a larger role in your behavior than your nurture. But I think nurture is important. Anybody who has kids know you raise the kids. You don't just have the kids and let them grow up however they're going to be. You somewhat set rules and principles and guidelines because those things are supposed to enter in your mind, and over time they're supposed to have some impact on your thinking and your way of life, your beliefs.
Black America is the way it is because of hip hop music and the Great Society and that kind of stuff. And
right. So, and then a lot of conservatives do say that. They'll say the music causes the behavior. That's what me and D1 got into it about, right? The music can have an effect, but everyone listens to similar music in my generation. So everyone's group does not behave the same. You can, as we stated before, Asians act away in general, not each individual Asians, but you can separate the races. Asians act away, Hispanics act away, whites act away, blacks act away. But all four groups listen to rap music. So why don't all four groups act exactly the same. I can't place the behavior on each group on the music. But let's see what else he.
I think the uncomfortable reality is a big part of it is intrinsic. One of the big arguments against the abolition of slavery in the 1860s is that, when Europeans colonized Africa, they hadn't discovered the wheel. There's no...
I figured it'd be too good to be true. So black people did have wheels in sub-Saharan Africa. I have to stop it every second. They had 2- and 3-story buildings in sub-Saharan Africa.
No writing. There's no written language. Missionaries had to go to Africa in the last century and invent it for the African people because they...
There's a man called Mansa Musa. If you get time to look him up, he was before the time period he's talking about. He literally caused inflation worldwide because he had so much money. He was giving away gold, traveling from West Africa to East Africa, and I think maybe further into somewhere into Europe. So to state these people had no writing is false. They had writing. I just can't off the top of my head remember the various languages, but I know they had one on the west part of sub-Saharan Africa towards Nigeria is in West Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, but I mean even closer to like the Ivory Coast, like way on the border. I mean they had 3 kingdoms actually since I'm talking about it, it's slightly a tangent, but they had 3 kingdoms in sub-Saharan Africa. They had one on the coast, then they had one around Nigeria, and then they had one around the Congo. So Africa's a little different from Asia and Europe in terms of the terrain. So the people were kind of scattered out because you have all these deserts, but they did have like a civilization here in Central Africa. And there was also a civilization in the west part of Africa, and then also another one on the coast of West Africa. So they had civilization, they had writing, they had money, they had a wheel, they had multiple story buildings. I mean, at one point, the Greeks later on, not specifically was before what he's talking about, but and somewhat before what I'm talking about as well. There were Greeks and people from South Europe who came and studied in sub-Saharan Africa. So if they came and studied, they had universities in sub-Saharan Africa. So I mean, it's just bullshit. I mean, maybe if people don't do the research, they don't know. But if you do the research, you will find out that West Africa did have its own culture and its own civilization. Now, I'm not going to argue with anybody who says that but in studying this, it does seem as though Northern Europe and parts of Southern Europe were more advanced. Some parts of Asia were more advanced. Some parts of East Africa, like that's sort of like the Ethiopians and the Egyptians who have like straighter hair as opposed to like type of hair that I have that's somewhat more coarse. But yes, there were different civilizations, and I can understand that maybe West Africa wasn't the most technically advanced, but in no way were like sub-Saharan Africans not advanced, and they were not way less intelligent like Nick is trying to imply. But let this finish because I get on tangents when people start talking about blacks.
There's no recorded history. They didn't have writing.
So Egypt is not in Africa.
Well, Egypt is a different race. The Egyptians were not black.
Okay, but you said when they went to Africa.
All right, this dude, it's a back and forth with homeboy. Now, okay, black can have lots of meaning. So when sub-Saharan Africans, like I was describing, is like the coarser hair and the black brown skin, but they're obviously Ethiopians have brown skin. People in Sudan have brown skin. Now Egyptians do have lighter skin because they mixed more with the East Asians and the Southern Europeans, but Ethiopians would not be considered white, and people don't necessarily consider Ethiopians a different race from black people. So I do understand that Egyptians are not what people deem as black, but there were people in East Africa like Ethiopians, like I say, who would be considered black. So to say they're a different race, yes and no. Race is just a tricky thing. I mean, I'll probably do a deep dive on genetics because it's specific traits and markers, things that mark you down for where you fit on the racial spectrum. But
Africa, so I just want to...
The interior of Africa in the late 19th century, scramble for Africa.
So we're now knocking Egypt out of Africa.
Well, Egypt is part of Northern Africa, Sub-Saharan
Africa. You said Africa, so I'm not trying to get a gotcha. I'm just responding. You're saying Africa.
Sure. Yeah.
It's in Africa. It's Egypt. It's kind of ridiculous to say there was no written language.
Well,
so I'm just trying to get you to
sure.
You know,
Egyptians are not Africans.
If I'm not pushing back, the internet will. So
Egyptians.
Bro. This dude here. Bro. Egyptians are not sub-Saharan Africans. Egypt, I mean, just like Candace said, Egypt is in Africa. They have Northern Africans, they have Sub-Saharan Africans, they have East Africans. They basically have potentially 3 races in Africa. You could say that, but all the people in Africa, whether they're Northern Africans, East Africans, like I said, Ethiopians, Egyptians, Northern Africans would be like Libyans and people from Libya, Morocco, I think. It gets confusing because Spain is right there. No, the Spain and Portugal is in the Europe part, and Morocco is in the Africa part. So Morocco is in Africans. And then obviously the Sub-Saharan Africans, Nigerians, etc., Congo. So those are 3 races in Africa.
Those are not racial Africans. When I say African, I'm saying Sub-Saharan Africans.
Sub-Saharan, okay.
Black people because it is a different race. In Sub-Saharan Africa, and Europeans did not penetrate that until late 19th century. They didn't have any of this. To the extent that you have infrastructure in Africa, it's from the Muslims in the Sahel and the Maghreb in northern Africa, where the Arabs colonized. And then you had, Carthage and Egypt, you had ancient civilizations. But Sub-Saharan Africa, they didn't have that. You take these people out of that land and put them here, and they're enslaved people. You let them free in a modern, liberal republic. They're not going to succeed. It's not going to go well for them. And that was one of the arguments against abolition.
It's just dumb. Like, black people are succeeding. Black people have been succeeding since since slavery ended. I mean, what he's saying is just stupid.
People said if you free them without any assimilation, without any kind of process for them to be acclimated, they're going to die. And that's...
Yes, I mean... When black people were slaves in America, they weren't taught. So they didn't know they knew how to read and write before they were slaves, but like when they were slaves, they weren't taught English, for example. So yes, you have to acclimate them and they have to assimilate in society. I agree with that.
Exactly what happened. Many of the bottom 10% of the lowest IQ Africans just died off.
I haven't looked into this. I highly doubt this happened. It doesn't even make sense.
For generations. And it had a, pardon the expression, but it had a eugenic effect, because over time, if the weakest are dying off, that's one argument for why blacks in America have a standard deviation higher IQ than the blacks in Sub-Saharan Africa.
Black people in America do not have a standard deviation IQ over Sub-Saharan Africans. Nigeria has about the same IQ as African Americans. They're both around 85. And then when we discussed earlier nature versus nurture, this is an example. Sub-Saharan Africa currently has a lot of areas that are underdeveloped. So in the underdeveloped areas, there's a lower IQ. But we've done tests in Africa as well as worldwide, and people are starting to see, the scientists are starting to notice, yes, if someone is malnutritioned or they don't have the economic means to get certain resources, that can affect someone's intelligence. But you can account for that, but you can also raise people's income or raise their resources and raise their nutrition. So worldwide, people are becoming healthier. So as people in third world are becoming healthier, their IQ is going up. So I say that to state that if Africans were to have the same standard of living as America, many scientists are saying their IQ would be about 80. So I do see and understand that, yes, the African IQ at its max potential may not be what the Northern Europeans is, but the Southern Europeans are, as I stated episodes ago, so you may should check out that episode if you have time. The Northern Europeans and Southern Europeans don't have the same IQ, so there's a difference in them. And then the East Asians have a higher IQ than the Northern Europeans and the Southern Europeans. So I going with what he's saying, the IQ differentiates amongst many racial groups. So I don't think that what he's implying about Africans is true, because his numbers are they're inflated. It's like hyperbole. He's making the sub-Saharan Africans seem much less intelligent than they are.
So, so I do believe there is something intrinsic going on there. And what makes people uncomfortable about this is the idea that it's unchangeable. There's something about, and this is why I'm a Catholic, we do have
he brings Jesus in and God and religion at the craziest time. Like, he talks bad about black people and then tries to say he's a Christian. I mean, he's probably a Christian. I'm a Christian. We're brothers in that sense, but it's like, I just don't see why he has to be so inflammatory towards my people. It's going to get a reaction out of me. So I just don't know why he's doing it, other than to be provocative and to get clicks, I guess.
Inherent desire for universalism. We do believe that there's a common humanity and a common human community and all of that. We hate the idea that we're born a certain way and we can never change. And that's just the way it is. And we even think about this in terms of, it's become not so popular these days to tell children, you can be whatever you want to be. Because we know that's not the case. Some people are tall, some people are short, some people are smart, some dumb, some ugly, some handsome.
There's always a lot to unpack with this dude. So, like, yes, you got tall people, you have short people, you have fast people, you have slow people, you have fat, you have skinny, but everything's on a spectrum. So to say one's smart and one is dumb, maybe if you're comparing two people, yes, one could be smarter than the other. But if you throw in a third person, now the one person you were claiming was smart, are they actually smart? If you now add a third person and they're further away from the third person in intelligence than the two, I'll give you an example using numbers. I won't use I use actual IQs. Let's say there's a person with a 120 IQ. Then there's a person with a 95 and 100 IQ. When you compare a person with a 100 IQ to somebody with a 95 IQ, sure, the 100 IQ is smarter. You compare the 95 and the 100 to someone with a 120 IQ, are not the 95 and 100 IQ practically the same? I look at the races in that way because I've been studying, not studying, but looking into IQ, the GIQ, which is tests, and then the standard IQ that people know, which is kind of stuff you can't prepare for, like memory, recall, spatial things, and logic. So I've been looking into it and I see differences, but to me, the differences between races are not huge. When you start looking at it and comparing like millions of people, you kind of start to notice it. But even in totality, the differences aren't as huge as a lot of people are trying to make it.
That's why, by the way, inceldom is a big part of this also.
So you believe these are immutable characteristics that are assigned at birth?
I think that, yes.
For the most part.
Things like race, all those attributes are immutable and unchangeable. But
they have changed. Just factually speaking, they have changed.
They change over time, over the generations.
Okay, so then you don't think it's immutable? Because if this was an immutable
individual person.
Okay, so you're saying that if you are born at this space and time as a black person in America, here is the cards that you're dealt with, and you can't change that over time.
Something like IQ does not change. It doesn't change wildly. It only changes genetically over. IQ is a big one, and that.
I hear him and a whole bunch of other people talking about IQ. I just got into this space, and I feel like I discuss IQ more in depth than a lot of the people that I'm talking about. So that should tell y'all something, right? They keep bringing up IQ, but they don't cover it for you guys. They don't tell you what it is. They don't tell you what it tells you, what it doesn't tell you. They just kind of use it as a thing because the numbers, yes, are different. Whites are higher than blacks in America, not necessarily worldwide. Maybe next time I'll show some clips comparing like African Americans to whites in Northern Europe versus whites in Southeastern Europe. I might cover that in detail to show that some whole groups of blacks are smarter than whole groups of whites. So they don't go into like the particulars or the nuance. They just make these general statements that have some truth, and then just because something has some truth doesn't mean it means what everybody's taking it as. That's what I don't like about Nick and other influencers. They seem like they're smart as I'm paying more attention to them and watching them. So they're smart enough to know that like the general things they're saying, there's slight truth or a strong portion of truth, but then when you leave out the whole truth, you're not giving people the whole picture. So actually, I feel like it would be better if they would not lead people on. Like, you have some truth, but how about give people the whole picture?
changes. That's a genetic trait. And so that can change over the generations, but you can't take an individual that's 75 IQ, which is the average in West Africa, and take them to 100.
So
as I stated, because of the situation in Africa, they're not up to par with everything. It is possible that the average IQ is 75. Okay, that's possible. 100, yeah, that's Northern Europeans, but the thing is, they're just skipping a lot of whites, though, right? They're skipping Southern Europe, Southeast Europe. They do this a lot, actually, because it's done in America. You're comparing the top whites like Finland, Denmark, Germany, and then you're comparing them to the lowest blacks with the sub-Saharan Africans who don't even have adequate nutrition at the moment. Do the same thing in America. Talk about black neighborhoods, you're going to pick the poorest black neighborhood, the most violent black neighborhood. Then you're going to start talking about somewhere where you have wealthy whites. It's the same old playbook from these guys. I mean, you're not really comparing everybody. You're picking out the best of the best in one group, comparing the worst of the worst in another group. It's ridiculous. It's a lie.
some people can't produce
it's not a fair comparison.
Smart person.
I believe they can actually.
Yeah.
But
so does that kind of debunk your?
No, because it's rare that happens. But IQ is a heritable trait, so it's unlikely that happens.
Well, the clip on him was short today, but I had a lot to say. So if you guys want me to continue doing Nick Fuentes clips, I can. If there are other influencers that you guys want me to react to on either side of the aisle, I feel like I have been commenting a lot about Republicans and conservative people. But if anybody has clips of liberals or Democrats, I have no problem responding to those as well. So if there's anything you guys come across, please leave it in the comments at Critical Commentary TV on all the socials. And then I have Lil Mo Music social on X. My producer don't like when I shout it out, but that's my social. So if you do have clips, feel free to send them to Lil Mo Music on X. Oh yeah, the comments. I forgot about the comments. I got you. You want me to tell the people I forgot, or just go to them? All right. Not sure if you guys heard the producer got on my ass. I forgot about the comments. It's a lot going on, guys. We just starting the show. I'm trying to remember the order. I'm trying to pull up the facts at the right time, yada, yada, yada. But he already had the comments pulled up for me, so that's helpful. And he wants me to read names, so I'm going to state who I'm reading comments for. From. As I told y'all last time, it's hard because people are not using real names. We have J Berg Q FP. This video was okay, and I'm learning on the go, guys. When I read a comment, I look to my right and it tells me what video. So they're commenting on the Nick Fuentes Dear Black People video. This video was stupid. You didn't address a point he made, and it literally sounds like you have an IQ of 75 and a fourth grade reading level. So it's a few things we'll get into here. Okay. I don't remember what I said in that Nick Fuentes reaction, but this time I think I did come with facts, and I think I did respond to the dumb shit he said. So whoever you are, hopefully you see either this episode or however the producer breaks up the segments. I'm not gonna tell you guys my IQ because I think people when you tell people IQs, they take it the wrong way. As I go into IQs more and tell people what it means and what it highlights, sure, I'll tell people my IQ because it doesn't matter. But to say I have a 75 IQ is absolutely ridiculous. And to say I read on a fourth grade reading level, what is your name? I mean, is this English? Is your name in English? This is ridiculous. Yeah, I don't read on a fourth grade reading level, and I won't say what level I read on. Because we get tested, just in case he didn't know, you get tested before kindergarten. I'm not sure if everybody knows, but when we take placement tests, everyone to go to school is taking placement tests. They're IQ tests. They just don't tell people because they don't want to hurt people's feelings. Then in fourth grade, you're taking assessments. The whole nation takes them, so we're getting scored on that. It's not the regular IQ. The standard IQ is the one you take in before kindergarten. That's standard IQ. And then fourth grade and eighth grade, that's more GIQ because they're testing on what we studied. You haven't studied nothing in before kindergarten. And then depending on if ACT, SAT, that's also GIQ. But then some people, like I took the LSAT, and I had friends who took the MCAT. Those are the LSAT is like the standard IQ that I talked about, whereas the MCAT is more like the GIQ. Sorry for the tangent, but since Homeboy says I don't respond to points, hopefully he's gaining some information from what I'm saying. We have Veronica Carroll, English, unlike Homeboy. No one should shed a tear over Nick like they did Charlie. Okay, hold on. We're gonna work through this. So her name was in English, and I actually kind of understand what she's saying. I don't want anything to happen to Nick, but Nick is like provocative. So I do understand, like, hopefully she's joking and just saying that Charlie was like nicer than Nick, so she's just kind of playing on that. I don't want anything to happen to Nick, but I did understand her statement and I understand what she said. Okay. Berta goes. Okay. You mean this is for the Red Scare? So I on another episode, I think episode 3, I talked about what's going on with the New York mayoral race. So again, if you're interested in stuff outside of race, if you're just interested in politics, you could check out that episode 3. You mean the Reds who are used to be given subsidies down on South are afraid of communism? They're living it. Don't quite know what they're discussing, but I did talk about Mamdani and how I don't support socialism. Read a couple more. Here's a perfect example of another. Well, this is from Willie Bing something. Here's a perfect example of another black dude putting off responsibility instead of accepting that there's a problem. Or you're getting attacked, then leave. Great low IQ opener. He's 100% right, and you fit the bill. So this is someone else commenting on Nick. I think I do take accountability. I've already discussed that blacks are committing crime at a higher rate than Hispanics, whites, and Asians. I've said that black murder is off the charts. I've just also stated that besides murder, some of the other things like welfare and violent crime, if you just look at everybody and compare fairly, you'll see that there's the same type of difference between an Asian and a white as you have between a white and a black. And I've also kind of tried to be nuanced and try to explain to people that the statistics are saying Hispanics and whites act similar, but the way the social economics in America is, blacks and Hispanics are in urban cities. So what ends up happening is that because so many blacks and Hispanics are low-class blacks and Hispanics are in like a small area, people notice the amount of crime that they're committing. So it comes across like Hispanics have almost like a stereotype similar to blacks, but they're actually committing crime closer to whites. So I just try to point out those nuances. Don't appreciate you saying I'm low IQ, but I'll let that slide for now, bro. Bizarre 777. So basically you support GNO. Got it. This is about the ADL. I'll have to look up GNO, see what that means. No, I don't support genocide. I literally support there being peace and a two-state solution. I want the Israelis who are currently there to stay. I don't want Israelis from all around the world coming and turning it into a Zionist state, but the Israelis who are there, they believed in the religion. They kept the religion going when they got scattered to various places. I respect the Jewish people as a whole. I see nothing wrong with Jews being in Israel. I see nothing wrong with Palestinians being in Israel. I just currently see a situation where we have Palestinians who are controlled and influenced by extreme Islamists. So I see both sides. I see why Israel has to be so guarded. They're a minority in the region. If you let the Islamic powers have their way, they will kill the Israelis. So Israel is right to defend itself. The only problem is Israel takes it way too far because they, in some ways, it seems like maybe trying to not just defend themselves, but gain land. So to me, Israel has enough land and they need to let the people who have always stayed there be allowed to stay in their native habitat as well. Steve Banning, 902. Haven't seen anything to prove him wrong. You haven't seen anything to prove Nick Fuentes wrong. If you open a book and just look at history, you'll see that a lot of the things that he says is right, but you'll see that a lot is wrong. He uses hyperbole and a lot of that stuff is wrong as well. It's been a lot of okay, so this is why I have done a few Nick Fuentes reactions. People are leaving comments about it. That's making me think you guys want me to talk about it. Paul Smith 6341 says Nick needs to focus on improving himself and leave black people alone. I'm with Paul Smith. The last one that came against black people got hit in his neck. I don't know what that means, but I do agree Nick should focus on improving himself in the white community. The last one that came against black people. Right? Well, I don't support Charlie Kirk being murdered. I don't know why he was assassinated, but yeah, it was fine with Charlie to question the black community. They have some legitimate questions. He had like some subtle, he wasn't racist, but he definitely had some subtle undertone that was disrespectful. But you know, he tried to keep it classy. So I agree with the first part of Paul Smith, not the second part about him getting hit to the neck. I think I read this one before, unless somebody might be new. Gilmer, well, this came, let's say, well, whatever. I'm not going to tell people the timestamp, but they say, you are too sensitive. He's right. You should retire. I believe I answered this already. I'm just getting started. Go up, find a couple more for you guys because I thought I might have read that one. David James 3071. Y'all sound stupid. Black people own no communities. Y'all sound stupid. Black people own no communities. I live in New Orleans. There are just tons of middle class housing areas that are for blacks. They have low income ones like the projects that people know, but there are tons of like suburban and just middle class neighborhoods and subdivisions that are predominantly black. So I don't know what you mean we don't own communities. We own many communities. The entire U.S. has been gentrified no, the entire U.S. has not been gentrified. Majority of the country is white, and blacks only represent 13%. It's unaffordable because of policies from conservatives and liberals, but it's not unaffordable because of blacks. There are crime in pockets. There are crime in pockets. So not everywhere that blacks are. So we haven't taken over. The whole U.S. hasn't been gentrified if it's crime in pockets. Yes, there's a crime and drugs in every city where blacks reside. In every rural town, meth. Okay, I mean, as you're talking, it's making more sense. White town and where meth and fentanyl addicts reside, and the government politicians are so smart, they got y'all fighting about color. Yeah, I don't know why you say y'all sound. Oh, maybe he's talking about other people. See, I'm reading this and not even sure who he's talking about. So he may be saying that people commenting don't know what they're talking about. They're crime pockets, but there's drugs and crime in rural and inner city. And politicians have everybody fighting one another. Yes, that's what this show is about, Mr. David James. Trying to get everybody to come together, address the real problems, and not fight one another. There's a few more. Nick Fuentes is part Mexican, Italian, and Irish. Nothing about that is Northern European, so okay. He's not the kind of white he talks about. Man, everything seems to be Nick Fuentes replies. Shut the fuck up. You guys are not doing fine on your own. We're doing pretty well, bro. Well, not pretty well, but we're doing okay. Your only professional victims. From what I see from Nick Fuentes and a lot of conservative commentators, whites are the big victims now. All you hear is whites complaining about what's going on. Creating the disgusting culture that keeps y'all down. I don't think so. Entertainment is entertainment. You turn on TV and you find things that entertain people, but that you wouldn't want your child or yourself to do in real life, right? People, it's like reading a book. It's just something that entertains you. You're not supposed to act on it. I read two more. I don't be wanting to hold up, the producer or just the listeners in general. Nick is judging all black Americans by the black lower class. True. That's like if I went to the most violent trailer park in the U.S. and judged all white people by them. True. That is why I now compare all whites to the most violent whites, because that's what they do to the blacks. America likes to keep white trash hidden in rural areas. Poor blacks are largely in metropolitan areas. Right. So it seems like a lot of people know the things that I was saying. I guess we just don't have enough prominent figures stating this on social media. So if anybody, whether you're black, white, whatever, understands this, I welcome you to join the discussion in comments, but also you can get yourself on social media and, spread the word so that people know, the various perspectives. Suburban blacks who are upper middle class, who make similar income, largely behave like Candace Owens, even though they disagree with her politics. Exactly. Majority, like I've said before, majority of black people vote Democratic. They behave like Candace, who votes for Republicans. Not majority of, well, I shouldn't say majority of blacks vote Democrat, but also majority of middle class and upper class blacks vote that way. So there are many black people who act like Candace Owens who just don't subscribe to her policies, is what he's saying, and what I'm also sharing with you guys as well. We'll let this be the last one. is from Wander C. Wander C. Again, Nick Fuentes. I guess these are all Groypers. Hi, Groypers. I don't have a problem with you guys. Some of you guys are nice on X. Some of you guys call me a nigger. I have to flame you guys, and you probably don't want to get in a back and forth with me because unlike what Homeboy said, I forgot your name, but I'm calling you Homeboy. I do not have a 75 IQ, so we could contact Jubilee now, and they could set up Maurice Williams against 100 Groypers, and we'll see how that works for you guys. Matter of fact, it could be me versus 100 Groypers, and you could bring Nick Fuentes. I'm still going to demolish you guys. Well, not all of you, but you know the ones who are coming against me. But let me read this comment. Went off on a tangent. You are not hearing what he is saying. You're insulted by it instead because you're black. I hear what Nick says. That's why I give him compliments, I think, often. He is not being racist. He is definitely being racist. He is just sick of black people's shenanigans. That's what's making him racist. He's sick of black people's shenanigans. Is he sick of white people's shenanigans? Is he sick of Hispanic people's shenanigans? You should be addressing the problem of your people. Yes, my people need to focus on education, understand that all races are different, and acknowledge that we have our own genetic flaws and genetic pros. So we just need to focus on our community. I do think blacks are better spending time on improving our community and our individual selves. But since we have so many white people like Elijah, I didn't forget you. I just been talking about Nick. There are so many white people talking about us. We have to dedicate some time to responding to you low IQ whites. This guy is not going to get on a train and stab an innocent girl in the neck unprovoked. I don't know who this guy is, but literally in North Carolina recently, it was not covered by social media. It was not covered by the mainstream news. A white man got on a bus or a train and he stabbed a black woman. I mean, this happens. It just wasn't covered. This guy is not going to have 30 priors. Yes, they've shown recently that, I forget what state it was, but the guy on the train had like 33 arrests or 33 run-ins and maybe 14 arrests. Well, they showed pictures in other states of like many people. It was blacks, Hispanics, and whites who had similar run-ins with the law and similar arrests. So they let people out who have multiple arrests regardless of race. It's just a policy in America that we need to work on fixing. For violent crime, we need to have stronger, longer sentences, and we need to not allow people to get out as fast. Let's see, you need to address, read more. So this is definitely the last one. You need to address the issue that blacks have a problem. Okay, I'll address that. Hold your own kind accountable. I say tons of things that black people don't like. I hear it all the time from black people. Instead of being insulted, realize that blacks are killing each other. Blacks are killing blacks, whites are killing whites, Hispanics are killing Hispanics. I'll just keep repeating it if you guys keep repeating the same old tired lines. Causing disruption to mother, harming others, address that instead, figure it out. If you want to speak to me on X or on Instagram or whatever, Wander Sia, I'm for communication. Definitely wouldn't mind talking to you, but I think all the issues you brought up in this comment have already been addressed. I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace. Blacks, Hispanics, and whites can't read. Why you think I started a podcast? It's a fucking racist thing with you niggas, and that's why I'm coming at you niggas next. They love to talk about black violence. Have you heard of white violence? White people commit violent crime at 3 times the rate of Asians. When is Nick Fuentes going to talk about white violence? Everybody's arguing about there are 2 genders. I sat next to her hermaphrodite in math class. Am I allowed to talk about the Jews? If she wanted, we could do it in the morning. Yawning, letting my eyes stretch, baby, I ain't a novice. I've been a dog, she FaceTime, but I never